It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Economic Outlook 2025, Navigating the Unknown, proudly presented in partnership with BDC, the Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce, and the Lambton Business Collaborative. So we have from the Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce, Rory Ring, who's at the back, the new CEO and President of Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, you usually find me by the bar.
We always know where to find Rory. And we're also proud to welcome and introduce another partner, the Lambton Business Collaborative, with the Sarnia Lambton Chamber of Commerce is proudly part of. So as I introduce all the organizations that are part of this collaborative, you would have heard all about it last week. Hopefully, Shauna, our fierce chair from SLEP, was all over the news talking about it. So we're a local group of organizations that are supporting local businesses together and doing lots of things together as we've been doing for many, many years. So I'm proud to introduce Shauna Carr from SLEP, which is Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership. With the City of Sarnia, Kelly Provost is also the Sarnia Lambton Workforce Development Board. I'm not sure if anyone is here from there tonight. Oh, we have somebody from Sarnia Lambton Workforce Development Board. We have Sarah from Community Futures Lambton. Stephanie from Township of Warwick. We have the Grand Bend Chamber of Commerce, Nicola. And Natalie from Lambton Shores. And Tourism Sarnia Lambton. I don't know if anyone's here from there tonight, but they are also a member of our collaborative. So these are the organizations that are working really hard together for our local community and our business community. So lots of stuff happening with that collaborative, and you're going to hear a lot more. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. Tonight we gather at a time of both challenge and opportunity as we look ahead to a new year marked by shifting global trends, evolving markets, to say the least, and rapid innovation. Our goal this evening is to equip you with insight and perspectives to better navigate the economic uncertainties ahead and to foster a conversation that's both thought-provoking and practical for leaders and businesses across our region. We're especially honored to be joined by Pierre Cleroux, Vice President, Research and Chief Economist at BDC. I have been saying that several times today. Pierre brings a national perspective to our local context, offering deep expertise and clear analysis on the economic forces shaping Canada's business environment. We look forward to hearing his insights shortly. Following Pierre's keynote, we're excited to welcome an engaging panel discussion moderated by Janice McMichael-Dennis, CEO of Blue Water Power, with some amazing panelists that have come from afar to join us today. Greg Moffat, President and CEO of the Chemistry Industry Association of Canada. Landon Treisice, Director of Government and Stakeholder Relations with the Canadian Fuels Association, and Crispin Colvin, Director with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Zone 6, Lambton and Middlesex. It's going to be a really great evening here together. So on that note, it is my honor to welcome Pierre Cleroux. Pierre was appointed Vice President, Research and Chief Economist at BDC in 2012. Pierre leads a team of experts who analyze economic data to identify business and sector trends impacting Canadian entrepreneurs. A seasoned speaker, he helps business owners understand the risks and opportunities presented by the economic environment. Mr. Cleroux is also responsible for providing economic analysis and advice to the bank's senior management team and supervises all marketing and industry research activities. Over his 25-year career as an economist, he has held several influential positions that had a direct impact on entrepreneurs in Canada and abroad. So please join me in welcoming Pierre.
Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everybody. I think you will agree with me, there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy right now. I won't be able to tell you how many tariffs we're going to have because I don't know, and probably nobody knows. But what I would try to do is to give you a perspective of the Canadian economy for the next 12 months. First, I'm going to start with the US situation. And because it's our #1 trade partner, I'm going to continue with Canada and also with Ontario. And at the end, I want to talk about what can we do in the current situation as a country, but also as business. So we talk a lot about the tariff in Canada, but in the US, this tariff is also a lot of uncertainty about massive layoffs. And there's a discussion about immigration. All of this is creating a lot of uncertainty. And as a result, consumer confidence in the US is down, significantly down. And why is this important? It's because consumers account for 2/3 of the US economy. So when consumers are concerned, when the level of confidence is lower, well, people don't spend as much. And that's exactly what's happening in the US right now. Retail sales in the US has been declining for 2 months. Those are the general numbers, but Target and Walmart, the 2 major retailers, said that their sales has been declining over the last few weeks because of the uncertainty as well. And as you know, the stock market has been very volatile. The level of volatility has been really increasing. This is another area of concern for Americans. So the result of this is the risk of a recession in the US is really increasing. We went from 20% to 45%, and some economists believe it's even higher than 50% risk. This is a huge contrast with 2024. In 2024, the growth in the US was 2.8%, the best growth of any developed economy. The unemployment rate is 4%, so the US economy was performing very well until the end of 2024. The reason why I mentioned this, not only because it's our trade partner, but it's probably the biggest argument that we have to convince the US administration that they are going in the wrong direction. Because when it's coming from your own country, when your own country is slowing down because of the tariff, well, this is a more powerful argument than saying that this is going to hurt the Canadian economy. So it's probably, part of it is the reason why the tariff was dropped on all countries a week ago. Because the turbulence on the bond market was such that the president decided to postpone for 90 days the implementation of tariffs. So as the US economy is going down, well, probably you will see less tariff imposed on Canada and the rest of the world. So Canada now, well, so far we have 3 tariffs, one on aluminum, and one on steel, and one on cars. Although the President of the United States said today that he might postpone the 25% on cars. He wants to be nice with the car makers, and he will probably postpone it. So we'll see tomorrow what is the decision. But this will be a big deal for Canada, because this is basically the biggest tariff that we are facing. Tariffs on steel and aluminum are important, but they're not as important as on cars. Also, Canada responded. So they imposed their own tariff on US imports. So many businesses are facing that as well. As for the tariff on the other countries, well, they were all postponed for 90 days except for China. But there was some exception from China for the Apple products, for example, over the weekend. So things are changing every day. I was going to say every week, but actually it's every day. What is the impact of all this on Canada? Well, there's three different impacts. The first one is the direct impact. The direct impact on the sectors that have tariff. Like I said, automotive could be dropped, but automotive is 15% of our export in Canada. So this is massive. And that's the reason why I say, if the US administration decides to drop the tariff on automotive, this really would change the game for Canada. Aluminum and steel are two important sectors, but they represent only 4% of our export. So first impact is the direct impact on those sectors. I was in Windsor this morning, and of course there's a lot of uncertainty about the industry. Second impact is the counter tariff. Canada imposed a number of tariffs on US import, meaning that Canadian businesses are paying for that. I met a client in flooring business, and a lot of his products used to be bought in the US. So now he pays 25% on that. That's a lot. So now they have to find other product in their supply chain. And the third impact is actually the uncertainty. And that sounds funny, but it's the biggest impact so far. The tariff has been implemented only a few weeks ago, but the uncertainty is really having an impact on the Canadian economy. First, on business. Investment intention are down. Massively down. So businesses are waiting to see what will happen. In the moment, they are not investing. They are cautious because nobody knows how many tariffs we're going to face. Not only business are worried, but also Canadians. 61% of Canadians are not confident about the economy. 88% of Canadians are concerned about the tariff. 40% of Canadians are afraid to lose their job. So what people do when they are concerned? Well, they don't shop as much. They don't spend as much. Car sales in Canada in February dropped by 10%. There's no recession in Canada. People haven't lost their job. Just the uncertainty is making people wait. I'm going to wait to change my car. I'm going to wait to go to a restaurant or whatever. We see it, for example, in the real estate market. The real estate market dropped in the last 2 months, despite the fact that the interest rate is going down. So at the end of 2024, we saw more sales in Canada because the interest rate is going down. Now we see the opposite, just because of the uncertainty. So the impact on the Canadian economy is already felt. This is the number of jobs in Canada. We have about 21 million jobs in the country. So you can see from the graph, over the last 6 months, every month, the Canadian economy was creating 60,000 jobs, 70,000 jobs. For example, in January, we created 80,000 new jobs. Well, in February, this number was down to 1,000. And in March, we lost 30,000 jobs, mostly in retail. So people have been cautious. So the very interesting thing is we don't have tariff yet, and already our economy is feeling the pain because of the uncertainty. There's some good news. The good news is interest rates are going down in Canada. As you know, inflation is now under control. We're back to price stability. Inflation is around 2%. So it allows the Bank of Canada to reduce its policy rate. Interest rate went down from 5% last summer to 2.75% today. We are expecting another cut on Wednesday. So we believe, we'll see if we're good with our forecast, but we believe that the policy rate is going to be 2.5% on Wednesday. And the Bank of Canada should continue to reduce its rate because inflation is under control, but also because the economy is slowing down. So a way to stimulate the economy is to reduce interest rate. We believe that's where the Bank of Canada is going. probably the policy rate should be around 2% at the end of 2025. That should stimulate the economy, because when you reduce interest rate, you stimulate consumption, you stimulate the housing market, and also business investment. Of course, the uncertainty is going to limit the positive impact of interest rates. So basically, in the next 12 months, you have two things happening. Lower interest rate will stimulate the economy, but you have uncertainty, and hopefully the uncertainty is going to go down. Uncertainty is going to limit the growth. So our forecast for this year is modest growth in Canada, 0.8%, about half what we have experienced over the last 2 years. So not a recession, just a slowdown in the economy. The slowdown is mostly because of the uncertainty, much more than the tariffs themselves. Actually, especially since the announcement today that Mr. Trump might postpone or eliminate the tariff on cars, well, there will be only 2 tariffs remaining in Canada, but the uncertainty is really having an impact. Ontario now. The Ontario economy will be affected mostly because of the automotive sector. The automotive sector represents 25% of Ontario exports. So this is by far the province that is most affected. Actually, these 2 provinces are really affected by the 3 tariffs, Ontario and Quebec. Quebec is aluminum, a bit of steel, a bit of auto parts. Ontario is steel and the automotive sector. Those 2 sectors, those 2 provinces will be more affected by the tariff and the discussion about the tariff. In Sarnia, the trade and transport equipment sector is really important, and this will also have a negative impact here depending on the tariff that are going to be imposed. So far, there's no tariff on equipment or on other products that we are exporting. But 2 months ago, Mr. Trump said there's going to be tariff on everything. So we have to be careful. So basically, the uncertainty is also having a negative impact on Ontario. Business investment are going down, just like for Canada, a bit more in Ontario. And the real estate sector is also declining, just like in the rest of the country, because of this uncertainty. What is going to help the province is the Ontario economy is large and is solid and very diversified. This is one of the most diversified economies in Canada. So manufacturing is important, and the manufacturing sector is seeing the negative impact of tariff, but the rest of the economy should support their growth. So our forecast for this year for Ontario is really modest growth, a little bit lower than Canada, 0.6%. This is the lowest growth we have seen in the province for a long time, and this is really because of the tariff and also because of the uncertainty. Having said that, we're not expecting a recession in Ontario, but a slow economy for 2025. Hopefully the uncertainty will go down or disappear and the economy will grow again. Because declining the lower interest rate is going to have a really positive impact on the Ontario economy if we have less uncertainty in the province. So the last part of the presentation, I want to talk about what can we do. We have no control on tariff. The tariff are decided south of the border. We can negotiate, but it doesn't seem to work very well. The tariff has been implemented anyway. But there's a number of things we can do as a country. And there's 4 things that we believe will help to get into the economy. The first one is to reduce our trade barrier that we have between provinces. It's interesting, we really have focused our economy, our trade, north, south. Now, with the new situation, we should also look at how we can expand our trade east-west. And this is an opportunity. In Canada, we're a small country, 40 million people. When you divide this country in 10 different provinces, well, those markets become very small. So by reducing the barriers between provinces, regulation, we can really help. We should diversify our export. Diversify not only to other countries, but to other regions in Canada and other sectors. For example, at BDC, we're going to start a roundtable to match businesses from Windsor to other part of the country, oil and gas, shipbuilding, defense, to try to help businesses who are losing some of their revenue in the automotive sector to do business with other sectors. So we should diversify. Third, and we can all do this, is support Canadian products. There's a momentum right now. Canadians are looking for Canadian products, and it's working. Some Canadian businesses really benefit from that. We have a client in Oxbury, in the east part of Ontario, where they manufacture and sell personal consumer products. For example, soap and cream. Their sales has increased by 40% over the last 2 months, just because Canadians are looking for Canadian products. So I can give you an example in the agriculture sector as well. So we should continue to buy locally. Finally, I believe as an economist that we should make it easier to do business in our country. Over the last decade, we have put a lot of regulations. It's more and more difficult to manage a business in Canada. We should change that. This is kind of a wake-up call, what's happening right now. And we should make it easier to do business in this country. So BDC is here to help. We have been helping Canadian businesses for 80 years now. When there's a crisis or a difficult situation like we are in now, we always have a specific program. In this case, we're ready to help businesses who are facing tariff with financing solution, advisory solution, and also, like I said, different programs to help to match, for example, Canadian businesses from different regions. So what can we do as business? Well, it's interesting, as you know, businesses are very resilient. In our last survey in March, 86% of Canadian businesses have been taking action to respond to the tariff. The first action is to become more efficient, to reduce their costs. So people are cautious. They are preparing for whatever could happen. They also expand or diversify the supply chain to face the counter tariff. And third, they want to expand their revenue from other markets. Could be in Canada, could be in another sector, or it could be abroad. So Canadian businesses are already taking action to protect themselves against the uncertainty in the tariff that we have. So what we propose at BDC is 3 things for business. First, to improve their efficiency or productivity. As you know, our productivity in Canada is not very high when we compare ourselves with other developed economies. Every business can work to improve their efficiency. If you're not as efficient as you should be as a business, you leave money on the table. You're not as profitable as you should be. Second, we should de-risk our international activities. Like I said, diversify our export, but also our supply chain. And finally, make sure that our businesses are resilient in terms of financially solid. We don't know what is going to happen in the next 6 months with the tariff, but we need to be ready for that. So in conclusion, the good news is our economy is in very solid ground. Inflation is now under control. Interest rates are down. They should be around 2% for the policy rate at the end of this year. The job market is still good. The unemployment rate is low in Ontario and in Canada. So we are well positioned to face a tough situation. So we don't know what will happen with the tariff, but so far, the economy is still standing. And we're not predicting a recession, just a slowdown because of the uncertainty. Hopefully, the tariff on cars will disappear. That will make Canadians much more comfortable with the situation, and the economy will be able to restart. Because lower interest rate has the potential to really stimulate both the Canadian and the Ontario economy. I'm going to stop here. We have some time for questions. Questions, I would be happy to take them.
I run a $15 million company, and we pretty good with about 60 employees at Black Ink in the United States of America. Not because I want to, but because I have to. Building 3 manufacturers. Considerable tariffs are coming back this way. Last week I held up a load of $65,000 worth of ink because it was going to cost me $88,000. anything to do with reciprocal tariffs because you listen to the politicians and they seem to be made on reciprocal tariffs. Should we do something with those?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's, there's not much we can do. The only thing I would suggest is to call your MP. Because Ottawa needs to hear the impact of the counter tariff. And we are very vocal about it in Ottawa. I meet a lot of clients in a similar situation. In this case, it's him. But I can give you a lot of examples about different products. People are importing and paying the tariff. The counter tariffs are here to influence the U.S. government. That's the strategy. By imposing counter tariffs, we put pressure on the U.S. government. But at the same time, they are having a negative impact on Canadian business. So the best thing I can propose is to call UNB, talk to that person and explain the negative impact of the counter tariff, so they can voice your voice to the people who are making those decisions.
Is a lower interest rate likely leading to a lower Canadian dollar?
Very good question. We're not sure. We don't think so. The dollar is already low. You know, the traditional value of the dollar was 75 cents. Now we are around 70 cents for two reasons. The uncertainty around the tariff that will have a negative impact on Canada, but also because of the gap of interest rate between the US and Canada. The Fed has reduced the rate only once. The rate is still elevated. Canada has reduced the rate many times. So even if we reduce the rate, I don't think we'll have an impact. So we see the dollar in Canada around 70 cents for the next 12 months. Because those two factors will remain. The uncertainty is going to be with us, unfortunately. And the interest rate, the gap is going to be made.
Okay, I am an immigrant. When I came, I was at university, I was talking a long time ago, that I was concerned or wondering why Canada, as a country, didn't manufacture its own car. We have Burkina Faso, which is a small economy in Africa, Vietnam. They are making their own cars. Why we cannot do that here? I think we are fighting for the tariff for American cars, and on top of that, taxpayers' money to subsidize their salaries. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So this is a wake-up call, that's what this is. But I think it's important to say, hey, wait a minute, we can compete in the international arena with our own car, our own, manufactured car. But we are fighting here for the American cars, and you have to go back to the actually NAFTA or just the free trade. They're supposed to be those, like the Wings are supposed to be working as a maquila, so with no taxes, no nothing. They go back, and when they came back to Canada, they are bringing with the tariff, right? As a importing cars. So my thing is, there is no, one idea say, hey, we can do this too. It's more power countries. Burkina Faso, a small, tiny economy in Africa, they are building their own cars. Mexico is doing the same thing. And Vietnam, why not Canada?
Well, in the last 30 years, we really worked hard to have a free trade agreement between two countries. And as a result, we have very integrated economy. So we make parts, and we make cars with parts that are made in Canada, in the US, and Mexico. Actually, the F-150 is made of parts coming from 24 different countries. So this has been the most popular economic policy in the last 30 years, to reduce tariff, to eliminate tariff, to have free trade agreement. So now we have a new administration saying, no, we'll impose tariff. Well, that's the problem. You cannot change the rule after 30 years And you cannot change the rule as quickly as that. And that's the reason why it was really a big reaction on the stock market and on the bond market. So, frankly, I think it's a bump on the road. I think in 5 years or 10 years, if we are here, we'll realize that free trade is back and we will be integrated again because it does make sense.
Yeah, but internationally, when you go abroad, it's not a Canadian car, it's an American car. For GM and Chrysler, they are not sold as Canadian. Oh, that car is from Canada. No, that car is from no. I think what I am trying to say is made in Canada. I know they are going to import for different countries, but the brand, I mean, I am maybe I'm crazy, but if it works, they're gonna call me a genius. If it's as important to have our own line of cars, why not?
It's not easy to start a car company.
Oh, I understand, but sometimes,
So that's the reason as well.
Yeah, I understand, but we have the action in the manufacturing, we have Chrysler, we have Chrysler, we have GM, we have Ford, even part of Canada, so those plants are Canadian plants. Why not?
We should go there and come back.
Pierre, you used the word uncertainty a whole bunch of times in your presentation tonight. Is there something that we as business people can and should be introducing into our narrative as we speak to our customers, as we speak to each other, as we speak to the public?
I think actually it's a very good question, and I think we should, as business people, business leaders, there's a lot of business leaders here, to calm down everybody. We still have a strong economy. We still have a very sophisticated economy. We still have a very diversified economy. So yes, the tariffs are scary, but actually the tariff is only 3 tariffs on Canada right now, and one of them is on cars, and because you can extract the American component is about 12%, and probably, like Mr. Trump said today, probably this tariff will disappear. So we should all breathe, and the Canadian economy will be okay. Right now, the economy is slowing down just because people are worried about what's going on. So my hope is after the Canadian election, people will be a bit less uncertain because we have the Prime Minister, whoever it's going to be, I don't know, but we will have somebody in place for the next 4 years. Second, I think this volatile, this change in tariff every day that we have experienced, I think it's about to come down. Because the market has been really reactive. And the US administration might not be sensitive to Canada, but they are sensitive to the market. And at one point, the market is telling them, stop this. This is too much uncertainty. And that's the reason why they cancel or they postpone for 90 days. So I think the economy will become a bit more certain. There will be always, with the new administration, the US will always be uncertainty. But I think it's going to be a bit more calm. And that's what we need to talk to our people. The economy is still strong. The job market is still solid. We are a strong economy and we will prevail. This is a bump in the road. We'll look at this a few years back and say, that was not so bad. So I think we have to calm people down.
Glad I have this moment for questions because I disagree with you that this might be a bump on the road unless we find that banks and our financial institutions have a great deal more patience. Because in the agricultural sector, we either have an ongoing market to fill, that we do with certain commodities. Some commodities, we get one shot a year. And we've already seen a downturn in commodity prices. But investments have been made in the past. How long is your patience going to be on money coming back in? And who are you wanting to invest in the next 5 years?
Yeah. There's no doubt that the current situation is having an impact on prices, especially on commodity prices. But this will come back. I don't know how long it's going to take, because there's no recession, there's no pandemic, there's no shock on the economy other than the risk of having tariff on our sectors. For example, on the agriculture sector, there's no tariff right now, and there won't be any tariff.
I would disagree, sir, on the counter tariffs that have been placed on American beef. That's now backing into Canada because we don't have processing plants here in southwestern Ontario to handle the beef we're producing, and they've evolved into going there. Now, you're hurting primary producers in Canada.
Yeah.
Where's your patience?
Well, I cannot talk for other financial institutions. I can tell you that BDC is very patient, and we support our clients in a good time, but also in a more difficult time.
Thank you. We'll see.
Yeah.
What would be a couple of interprovincial trade barriers you'd like to see removed?
Personally, on alcohol, no. There's actually a lot of barrier on alcohol, but it wouldn't be my first one. Construction is one of them. It's very hard to build in another province because there's so many regulations. On food processing, every province has their own regulations about food processing, and that could really help businesses. The problem with the regulation is, I would take construction for example. If we had an open market in Canada, it allows businesses to become bigger and have more economy of scale, becoming more productive. We always say that Canadian businesses are not as productive as in other countries. One of the reasons is those regulations. We have a small market, 40 million. If you divide this in 10 different provinces, your market is very small. So one way to help business to enjoy economy of scale, to get bigger, is to eliminate those barriers. So construction would be one, food processing another one, and why not alcohol as well? Yeah.
Wouldn't that, just continuing in that line, wouldn't that just create more chaos and exacerbate the situation, in fact? Because these smaller players in the protected markets would suddenly be facing competition from inside of Canada, but, probably not as efficient as the bigger players.
Will force businesses to be competitive.
Agreed, but maybe this is not the time for that.
Well, what I would do as a government, if I were at the government, I would support businesses to be able to make this next step, because that's really what we need to do. And frankly, I didn't talk about this, but when I talk about a better business environment, that's including that. We should be in Canada more supportive to our business, to improve their efficiency, to invest in technology. It's difficult for business to invest in technology. It's costly. But if the government support this transition, well, it would be easier, and we will be more efficient, more productive. So I think it's an overall package. We need in Canada to support more our business. I agree a little bit with your comment. We do a lot, we export a lot of raw materials. We should transform it more in Canada. And that's good for aluminum, that's good for steel, that's good for agriculture sector. We need to transform more than we are doing now to protect our future. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pierre, for bringing your insights to the group. And there was some encouraging words there too. I'm an optimist, so I really picked up some encouragement in that presentation. So thank you. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break to let our panelists get organized, and then we're going to be back here in 5 minutes to have our our amazing panelists speak. Okay? So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Janice McMichael Dennis, who is tonight's esteemed panel moderator. So I know Janice probably doesn't need an introduction in this room, but I'm going to give one anyway. Janice is the proud president and chief executive officer of the Blue Water Power Group of Companies, which includes the regulated utility and affiliated companies. Prior to joining Blue Water Power, Janice worked years in the natural gas sector, holding various finance and regulatory roles and appearing numerous times as an expert witness before the Ontario Energy Board. Janice holds a BA in economics and an MBA in finance. She is a humbled recipient of many business and leadership awards over the years and has participated on countless boards. Janice currently proudly serves as chair of the Electricity Distributors Association Board of Directors and sits on both the MIRI, and the MMI Board of Directors. Janice is married to her husband Bill, and they have 2 amazing sons, a chubby golden retriever and a feisty gray cat. Janice is an accomplished leader with a deep understanding of industry, policy, and the economic realities faced by communities across southwestern Ontario. Her leadership and perspective will no doubt guide us through a dynamic and valuable conversation this evening. Joining Janice tonight are 3 distinguished voices from key sectors of our local economy. First is Greg Moffat, President and CEO of the Chemistry Industry Association of Canada. Greg leads CIAC with over 30 years of experience in government relations and public affairs. As CEO, he drives sustainability, innovation, and collaboration across Canada's chemistry and plastic sectors. Previously, as CIAC's Executive Vice President, Greg has shaped policy, advocacy, and responsible care initiatives. His career has focused on strategic communications, regulatory challenges, and stakeholder relations. Greg holds an executive MBA from the University of Alberta and a BA in political science from the University of Calgary. He's a proven leader, committed to fostering trust, sustainability, and community impact to the industry. Landon Treesice, Director of Government and Stakeholder Relations with the Canadian Fuels Association. Landon is the Director of Government and Stakeholder Relations at the Canadian Fuels Association. With a background in government, he has held various roles, including working with the Ministry of Energy and Deputy Premier, and offers a unique blend of public sector experience and industry insights. He leads efforts in Ontario to promote innovation and technology in the production of lower carbon transportation fuels. And last but not least, Crispin Colvin, Director with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Zone 6, Lambton and Middlesex. Crispin represents farmers in the southwestern Ontario counties of Lambton and Middlesex. He and his wife have a small herd of beef cows and grow corn, soybeans, and wheat together with their son and his young family. Crispin was first elected to the OFA board in 2016 as a director at large and was elected chair of Farm and Food Care Ontario in 2023. He's a former mayor of Thames Centre, warden of Middlesex County, and chair of the Board of Governors of Fanshawe College, and has also been involved with the Thorndale Fair Board and the boards of Western University, the London Training Centre, and London Convention Centre. He is passionate about land use planning and farmland preservation, as well as issues related to livestock production and animal welfare. Crispin is bilingual and a graduate of both Western University and Fanshawe College. So please join me in welcoming these wonderful people.
Well, thank you, Carrie, for that lovely introduction. I am beyond honored. We have a little bit of feedback, right? I am absolutely beyond honored to serve as your moderator this evening for this panel of esteemed experts. I'm very proud to even share the stage with you, so thank you for joining us, and I look forward to interacting with you. I do want to say a big thank you to the Chamber and a big thank you to the Sarnia-Lambton Business Collaborative. You put this together on really short notice, and you did a great job. And I think I speak on behalf of the whole community to say that we appreciate what you do, and we're very, very grateful for all your work on behalf of not only the business community, but the whole community. So thank you, Chamber. Thank you so much, Lambton Business Collaborative. We appreciate your work. I listened to Pierre quite closely, and I thought it interesting that Pierre, when asked the question, what can business leaders do? One of his messages was, calm down. He actually said, if you're here later, you will see it was bump the road. If you're not here later, a little more than bump the road. But on the notion that we have to encourage others and calm down and learn to thrive in chaos, I thought to myself, how can I introduce this topic maybe then on a little bit of a lighthearted note? We know it's a serious situation. We know there's words like recession, and there's words like job loss, and we heard Mr. Cook talk about the $88,000 issue. So it's a serious issue. I don't have to tell you that the current uncertainty causes for some serious times. But I thought to myself, how can I think of it in a way that might be just a little bit lighter? So, my first question is, have you ever put together IKEA furniture? Because if you have, then you can understand my point. If you have put together IKEA furniture, and if you have done it with your spouse and are still happily married, then you know what a death-defying accomplishment that can be. So I think of this a little bit like putting together IKEA furniture on a time limit with your spouse, and guess what? The damn directions aren't in the box, okay? So on a lighter note, I think that's what we can liken it to. And I thought about that for a bit, and then I thought, you know what? I'm really not sure that does it justice. I mean, yeah, that's, just even thinking about that gives me some heart palpitations. It makes my palms sweat, but it's a little more horrific than even that. So then I thought about a maze. Okay, so we're all in this maze. We've never been in the maze before. We're starting out, and we have to get through to the end. We have to get through the end, and we have to do it in one piece. Okay, the problem is you're blindfolded, okay? That's gonna make the maze just, oh my goodness, so much more challenging. But not only are you blindfolded, blindfolded, but there are wild dogs chasing you, okay? And they're rabid. We're not talking about dogs like my chubby golden retriever Maverick, okay, who would just lick you and kiss you to death. But we're talking about going through a maze, blindfolded, with rabid dogs, my apologies to any dogs who I may have offended, nipping at your heels. So on that lighter note, let's learn from our panelists here on how we can navigate it, how we can get through that maze, how we can get to the end of that maze. We're gonna rip off the blindfold, we're gonna throw our head around and blow some kisses to those dogs, and we are going to be way stronger than when we entered the maze. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. Okay, so we have some questions, and I'm looking forward to chatting about each one, chatting about how we take this crisis and we make it into an opportunity. How we come out better on the other end, and how we're more resilient, we're stronger, and we're overall just better community at the end of that maze. So the first question I'm going to ask, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Greg first, but I'm going to ask this of each of you. So, in light of the current economic uncertainties, did we mention that? There's a few economic uncertainties out there. So in light of those current economic uncertainties, including the trade disruptions, including the policy shifts, and everything else, what collaborative approach can industries adopt to enhance resilience and to drive sustainable growth? Everywhere, but especially in the Sarnia-Lambton community. So Greg, what do you think about that? Look at that, you're on.
There we go, I got the light. First off, thanks very much, Janice. Great introduction to the panel. Thanks, Carrie and the Chamber team for setting this up and putting it together. You know, just drawing a theme, Pierre Cleroux from BTC just talked about how integrated the North American economy, and it's no more apparent in how chemistry and plastics are critically and very much so integrated, and that's Canada, US, and Mexico. I was talking to Crispin earlier. You know, sometimes you hear about this notion of molecular chemistry, or molecular tourism, sorry, and it works for beef cattle just as much as it works for chemistry inputs, but chemistries or plastics manufactured here in Canada could go across the border and be upscaled in some way, shape, or fashion, and come back and go another stage of upscaling, go back into the US, a little more upscaled, and it can move back and forth across the border. That border really doesn't mean anything to those goods. You know, we're talking about trade. Businesses trade, governments sign trade agreements. And so governments in North America, it's really being driven by the US administration, but governments need to sit down and resolve this trade dispute and let businesses get back to trade, because that's what businesses do. In Canada, about 80% of what's manufactured within the broad scope of chemistry and plastics is exported, and about 80% of that is exported to the US. It's highly integrated. What that means from a number perspective, about $115 billion worth of goods is traded between the US and Canada on a year-over-year basis. From an Ontario perspective, and a lot of that shows up here, it's about $3 billion worth of chemistry, and that could be anything from butyl rubbers to isopropyl alcohol. On the plastics resin side, it's a little bit higher. It's about $9 billion worth of good, and that's resin that's produced here, but it's also resin that's upscaled by converters and other manufacturers, and those goods are sold back into the US. I think the thing that is important for us to understand, and I mean, you'd like to think it means something, but you know, in the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, USMCA or CUSMA, chemistry is one of a handful of sectors that actually has a sectoral annex. We're specifically included in the last free trade agreement, and it is very much about driving conformance or alignment in how chemistries are regulated, but also to try to find ways to make that trade more efficient. Unfortunately enough, I think a lot of folks in Canada are thinking these trade agreements don't mean anything, but they are critically important, and there will come a time when governments will sit down and renew or revisit or renegotiate the trade agreement, and that'll be very important to do. You know, with this tariff uncertainty, there was a moment in time where goods were tariffed going into the US. The US pivoted very quickly, and those goods that were USMCA compliant, rules of origin, where there was a 0% tariff, and that's a world that chemistry and plastics lives in Canada for the most part. And so what were companies doing to deal with this uncertainty? Because you never know, is something going to happen, right? The yo-yo approach to tariffs in the US, a huge amount of uncertainty. Where our members could move product into the US, they absolutely were doing that and trying to stage it. What that does is it increases cost, right? When the tariffs were in place, I know anecdotally that some of our members were actually, you know, what you would say, they were eating the cost of the tariffs so they could maintain market share. Not everybody's in a position to be able to do that, right? And I think the other thing that would be important for you folks to understand about chemistry and plastics, chemistry here in the Valley is done by large, highly integrated companies with global perspectives. But we also represent the plastics value chain, and that's from resin manufacturers to converters to recyclers. And that recycler converter stage, that's dominated by small and medium-sized enterprises, less than 100 employees, family-owned. And so those are perspectives that we get as well. Their ability to react and respond is very limited. So, you know, how does industry function in this very, very uncertain world? Try to be positive to the extent you can. Try to react quickly. rely on your associations to help understand an incomprehensible world at times, but this will clear, and we need to get back to a trade agreement that all parties involved accept and honor, and let businesses get on with trading with each other.
Thank you, Greg. That was great. Let me tell you that people in Sarnia-Lambton truly appreciate the chemical and plastic industry. So thank you for what you do in your association, and we certainly value that. I think the one part I took away from that is let's let businesses get back to business, because that's what we do. So on that note, I'm going to, the microphone is in your hand, Landon. Why don't you tell us a bit about what collaborative approaches do you think can and should be looked at?
Well, so from the Hills perspective, sorry, I'm thinking about this a bit, and I guess sort of my advice is trying to keep it kind of local, and then I'm often reminded of a very famous phrase in politics that all politics is local. I think the best collaboration you can make in times of uncertainty is that to be sort of present with your local elected officials, with everyone, quite frankly, anyone that will listen to you talk about this, because this the buzzword of the last month or two, I don't know how long it's been, 8 years, how long has he been elected now, has been about uncertainty, right? And even before that, I've been on both sides of the political table, and uncertainty is always been a buzzword. It's every meeting I've ever had, whether we're a minister or being the person on the other side of the table, has been we need certainty around these things. We don't care what decision you make, just make sure it's clear. But the truth is, that's not always possible. Not that it's not possible, it's not always followed by elected officials, right? So we certainly at CFA have been having long conversations about what does that sort of regulatory resiliency mean, and sort of chart a path on our own, not necessarily jumping sort of through these policy hoops, whether it's something to do with climate or to do with trade, and make sure we're sort of charting our own path forward, and making sure that that is communicated at the local level, at the highest office in the land, and making sure that we're repeating, like, this is where we're going. Because the last thing you want to do is have one government come in and say, okay, these are the rules around X. Next government comes in and says, nope, that's a terrible policy, we're doing that. And then when that government eventually gets kicked out again, this one's got to come back in and double down on what they missed out on. So obviously for this, I'm speaking more on climate, because that's a big sort of issue, decarbonization for the fuels industry. So it's about how sort of we're sort of looking at things beyond just these 4 years, and making sure that that's clear to politicians, that everyone's got to line up properly on this. Otherwise, we're going to end up paying more in the long run, or we're going to go down the wrong path. So making sure your voice is kind of a long-winded way of saying, like, just keep bugging the hell out of your elected officials and talk as long as you can to.
Thank you, Landon. Let me start by saying, given your position with the Canadian Fuels Association, Sarnia-Lambton also loves our fuel industry. So thank you for what you do and what all your members do. I think I've heard in that be present, engage, use this as an opportunity to strengthen relationships, get out there and talk, and bottom line, bug the hell out of your elected officials, as per Landon. So thank you, Landon. Next, Crispin, you're up. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on this matter?
Okay, well, first of all, the uncertainty aspect of it, I kind of chuckled when that was coming through, because nothing can be more uncertain than being a farmer. We don't know what the prices will be, because we are price takers. We don't get to set the price. It's done by Chicago Board of Trade. We depend on weather, we depend on the product that we can get, we depend on the seed, we depend on the access to fuel, and we depend on weather. Did I mention weather? Rain, sunlight, not too much of either, and then again, lots of both. So uncertainty in agriculture is a way of life. But one of the things that I would look at, if you want to sustain and grow agriculture, what we really need to do is change our attitude towards land use. We need policy changes
where we can appreciate the land. The land in this region, in Ontario and in southern Ontario in particular, is considered to be class 1, 2, and 3, 4 lands. Those are the best in the country. That's what we're sitting on. But unfortunately, what we do, and I did it when I was in municipal politics, we look for areas where we can grow, where we can expand our borders. And the problem is we're covering up the best land in the process. Ernie Hardeman, the former Ag Minister for Ontario, used to say the best land in Ontario is underneath Toronto, and he's right. So we have to start looking at economic development and economic land use, and instead of saying, let's build another plant, let's build more houses here, let's take the reverse. Let's take bold steps in areas such as Sarnia, such as Windsor, London, and areas like that, and say, we're not going to grow further onto this top quality land, because otherwise we're not going to have food to eat. And that's a big problem. We lose 319 acres of land a day in Ontario to development. That's unsustainable. In fact, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization predicts that by 2050, only 10% of the world's land mass will be arable. And at the same time, they're predicting 9.7 billion people on Earth in 2050. So in 25 years, 10% of the world's land mass has to feed 9.7 billion people. Canada and Ontario in particular is one of the prime areas to protect that land. So that's probably the biggest challenge I would see for agriculture. We grow over 200 different crops in Ontario for food, fiber, and fuel, most of any province in the country, and yet we don't treat our land with the same reverence. As somebody once said to me, it's all valuable farmland until somebody wants it for something else. And that's not the way to look at it, because Ontario's agri-food industry produces $52 billion in GDP to the province. That's greater than the automotive industry. In fact, it's greater than any other industry in the province. So agriculture and agri-food is your biggest economic driver, and yet it gets the least attention. So we really have to start looking at land, how we treat it, and how we're going to make best use of it. And so I have discussions periodically with MPs and MPPs, and I keep saying we have to intensify. And I've been told, oh, well, not everybody wants to live in an apartment, but does everybody want to eat? That's the counterpart. And I think everybody wants to eat. So if I'm looking at challenges and how to sustain and grow agriculture, land preservation has to be our #1 consideration.
Thanks very much, Kristen. You reminded me of that old saying, if you ate today, thank the farmer. So thank you to you and to your members for what you do. We also have Don McCabe in the audience, who has been key in the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. So thank you for all you have done too, Don. So good answer, thank you. I understand the weather impact of being a farmer, because as the president of a utility, I'm still in therapy after our last storm. So I get how weather can really affect your life. So I appreciate that. So thank you for your input and your insight in that, Kristen. I am next going to turn it back to Landon. And you mentioned sustainability. So, and I want to explore that a little bit more. So with Canada's current focus on developing the low carbon fuel sector, what measures are essential to really support that, Landon? And what can businesses do in our region to capitalize on these opportunities and be better off in the end, and certainly not worse off? What do you think about that, Landon?
Yeah, so first I'd say liquid fuels, if you look at any sort of forecast internationally or even here in Canada, they're here for decades to come. This is not a question about whether liquid fuels will be here. So a lot of energy policy is, particularly on the political side, is always about chasing the new sexy thing, storage or electrification. These are all important pieces. Like I said, we're having these conversations about what decarbonization is for our industry. And there's a number of pieces that come along with that. Obviously, carbon capture is a big piece for us that we're talking with the government developing right now. We can only capture so much. We're not going to capture our way out of decarbonizing the entire industry. So the next kind of big piece to that is the fuels themselves, and electrification is certainly a great path forward for small and medium vehicles. Not so much on the larger vehicles, airplanes, even large trucks. To put it one way, a great example I heard was that, so a transport truck that you guys see constantly going over your bridges, to charge just one truck for its trip would be the equivalent of 200 households. So, as you may know, Ontario's got a power grid crunch right now. Obviously, we're not going to get to electrifying that, along with heavy duty and airplanes and marine. So, we're looking at what those fuels are that make sense. And again, when you're talking about energy policy, it's the triangle, it's affordability, reliability, and sustainability is a piece to the other piece to that. And they all kind of have to work in harmony in order for that policy to make sense. So it's our contention that obviously these low carbon fuel solutions doesn't necessarily have to be one specific one. Obviously we've got a very large ethanol production here in Ontario, kind of ends at that. And our argument to the government now is they should be looking at a very holistic approach to decarbonization, particularly in the transportation fuel sector. And it's from hydrogen to biodiesel, renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel. These are investments we need to be making it now in order to see those big changes that we need. But there's also economic benefit. The grain farmers here in Ontario actually put out a study when we shifted from E5 almost to E10. That's the percentage of blend that you have ethanol in your tanks right now. When we made that shift 15 years ago, there was a $650 million jump in GDP just because of that. So there are economic arguments for this sort of transition or decarbonization as well. So all of that said, we do make a lot of ethanol here. We don't make much else. There's also a biodiesel blend that's required here in Ontario. We don't really make it. We make very small scale, and it's not for our purposes, so a lot of that's imported. The big problem that we have right now is the IRA. It was previously the IRA, I don't know what the president's going to call it now, but he's doubled down on their supports for biofuels in the States for obvious political reasons. So we are looking further and further at kind of removing one of those pieces, or lowering one of those pieces of the triangles, and that's that sort of energy security piece, that the reliability that we require. So right now in Ontario at E10 rules, we import about 40% of our ethanol for our fuel. By the time we get to 2030, which we're going to have an E15 mandate, we're going to be at about 60%. And that's not including any sort of growth projections as well. So that's what sort of keeps us up at night, and that's what we bring to the government consistently. Like, look, we need to be making these moves now in order to prepare for the future, and making sure that we're ensuring that sort of triangle remains balanced sort of going forward.
Thank you. That's great. I love that three-legged stool analogy. And you're absolutely right. If we cut off one of the legs, such as affordability, in the interest of the other two, we can't stand up. So I think that's a great perspective. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to turn it now to Greg. And Greg, you had mentioned that when you, at first, your sector, which is the chemistry sector, you kind of swallowed the, some of the early economic impacts. And so why don't you tell us what the sector is doing now to deal with the cross-border operations and the implications of that? And liken that to maybe what we can do in the room, the strategies you're employing for all businesses to maintain that competitiveness in the light of tariffs.
Thanks for the question. The way I'd like to take that question is, thinking about it through a competitiveness lens. Again, the way your value chain is structured, that's not easily changed, right? For some, it's a little easier than others. Again, when you think about steel or aluminum, you're thinking about one product. When you think about chemistry, there's a broad spectrum of goods in there. Our larger members operate 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and are moving unit trains of product, right? And so those value chains are very, very difficult to restructure. Probably no difficult than if you're buying your ink from 1 or 2 or 3 manufacturers. It's not easy to do, right? So that takes time. And companies will figure that out, right? The flip side to that is that we're a really, really wide country, and the reason why our trade is so north-south the way it is in lots of instances, Canadians are closer to Americans in terms of where their potential market is, and everybody will benefit from interprovincial trade barriers going down. But the reality is that there could be domestic alternatives here in Canada for a broad spectrum of goods, not just chemistry. And this challenge is going to help us find that out, right? Find out where our next customer is. And I don't think that's necessarily different for chemistry and plastics, but there is a section of our membership that manufactures in bulk and moves to customers that are for the most part in the US. So how do you deal with that? I would say that this is a competitiveness issue. And the fact that our largest trading partner is not proving to be overly reliable, it means we need to come back and take a look at what's happened here in Canada over the last number of years. And I think I heard a comment earlier today, whether it was from Pierre or somebody else, let's not waste this crisis, let's learn from it, let's act from it. But there are things that business can do, but we really need to turn our attention to governments. We need to focus on improving the competitiveness of the Canadian economy and for manufacturing within the economy. It's a question of tax, it's a question of regulatory. We need to improve our competitiveness. If we are going to be able to, right now, again, you've heard the number, huge dependence on the US. Our critical trade transportation infrastructure is geared to moving goods north-south. And if we're going to have a chance at opening markets, we need to do a much better job east-west. And hear lots of comments about pipelines and power lines and transportation corridors. But for manufacturing in Canada broadly, chemistry as well, we need to double down on our critical trade infrastructure. And in doing that, we also need to deal with the near annual labor disruptions that plague our transportation system and have made us an unreliable trading partner. Some people might think those are just words, but globally, Canada has become a very unreliable trading partner because of the near annual disruptions in our rail and port infrastructure. It's an embarrassment, and this isn't about lower wages for workers. This is about putting a framework in place that allows for competitive wages in a process that doesn't hold the Canadian economy hostage, which is really what's been taking place. And if you can get those 3 things in place, then we can start to open up our exposure to other markets. Whether that's moving goods east to Europe or moving them west to Asia, we're only going to be able to open our exposure to other markets if we get those 3 fundamentals right. And I still think it's going to be really difficult to change our trading relationship with the US. I like to say, when you need a cup of sugar, it's sure nice that you can go to your neighbor as opposed to hop in your car, and not everybody has a grocery store 2 minutes away, right? Well, that's our relationship. And you folks experience it's just across the bridge, right? We need to do the things I was talking about, but maybe it's going to move the needle from 80% depending on the US to 70, and maybe that's over the next 20 or 25 years. It's going to take a long time to reorientate how we are structure ourselves here in Canada. But we have to start, and we need to act. We need to act with urgency.
I like that, Greg. Thank you. I like how you captured it as a competitiveness issue. And now it's time to look back and see how the heck we got here and what we're going to do different. Where we're going to seize the opportunity now that we're not in this position in the future. So I think that's a good message. So thank you for that, Greg. I'm going to turn it back to Kristen. And given the ongoing concerns about farm profitability, and you spoke to several of these, what mechanisms, I know you mentioned land, and maybe that's the key one, what mechanisms, including land and other, are needed to really sustain and grow our agricultural sector in Ontario, Crispin?
Well, the list is long. I don't know if we have enough time.
You got 3 hours. Everybody got 3 hours? Yeah.
Certainly, when you talk about growing agriculture, investing in research and development is key. We're very technologically savvy in agriculture, and farmers are quick to adopt new technologies. When I used to plant soybeans, my son does most of the cropping work now. I'm sort of the tractor driver when he needs me. But when I did it, I would figure out on the back of a seed bag how many pounds per acre I had to put on the field. And my math was never good, and I was usually wrong, but at least I got a good crop, and I put more on than I needed to. He's got a monitor in the tractor that tells him how many seeds he's putting in. So it's far more technological now. And that's the kind of research and development that we need to continue to have in agriculture in order to be able to grow it and sustain it as well. But we talked also a bit about interprovincial trade, and Pierre talked about this as well in his remarks. And he mentioned about the abattoirs. If you're provincially inspected, your product does not leave Ontario. If you are federally inspected, you can send your product anywhere across Canada or even export to other countries. So we really need to break down those interprovincial trade barriers. And there are going to be some bumps in the road because of that, because inevitably smaller producers like myself might get squeezed out. But on the other hand, it's going to make it a much more sustainable agricultural framework if we could do that across the country. In fact, Deloitte did a study, and they said that if the interprovincial trade barriers were removed, the GDP in the country would grow by 4%. So it's not a huge amount, but that makes a heck of a difference. So we need to try and get into far more research and development, and that's always been one thing that I've been frustrated with. We don't do a lot of that in Canada. We talk about it, and we start to do some things, and then we stop. And I look back to the COVID crisis, and you say, don't waste a good crisis. You're absolutely right. And the Premier said, we're going to make our own PPEs in Ontario, and we're going to develop vaccines, and they're going to be done in Ontario. Well, the crisis is over, and I don't think any of that happened. So now we've got a crisis, we've got an opportunity to do interprovincial trade that will really support agriculture, among others, but we also, in the same vein, have to increase our transportation corridor east and west because we don't have enough rail lines to carry all the product across. Grain farmers in the west got severely frustrated a few years ago because their product was being bumped off the rails. Other products were going to Vancouver. The trouble with agriculture is if you take our product and say, oh, we'll get to you in a couple of months or 6 months or next year, well, it's going to rot, it's going to die, it's going to lose quality. Things happen to agricultural products. It's perishable. It needs to move. So we have to get those rail lines, we have to expand them, we have to improve our ports, as was said. We have to expand our port facilities as well. And all of those are major dollar infrastructure programs. But at the same time, major dollar infrastructure programs create employment, and that boosts the economy in itself. So agriculture is just one step in that long chain of how do we improve our supply chain, how do we improve our corridors and transportation, how do we improve our research and development.
Great answer, thanks, Kristen. R&D, interprovincial, elimination of barriers, and investments in infrastructure, all good themes, so thank you for sharing that. Before we close with a few closing comments, I'd like to turn it over to the audience because we have time for 3 questions. If anybody knows a good moderator ends on time, okay? So with that in mind, I'm going to open it up for 3 questions. If you have a burning question, put your hand up, and we will take them as they come. Yes, please, back. Thank you.
Hi, Kristen. How are you?
Good.
Good. Kristen, the Ontario Real Estate Association has recently put on their radar truck farms. Are you familiar with what's happening with truck farms across Ontario?
No, I'm not.
So it's becoming a real problem. So trucking companies, large trucking companies, are buying up farmland and they're using them to park their transport trucks on. and they're calling them truck farms. So they're all across Markham already, Brampton, and now they're moving down towards Hamilton area. So one of the things that comes with trucks, unfortunately, is diesel fuel and oil that gets leaked. So now those farms can no longer be used, they would have to be remediated. It is illegal, and MPs are being talked to, and there is pressure on MPs right now to get the truck farms out of there, because they shouldn't have they buy up their properties under false pretenses, don't use them as farms, and they just start parking their trucks on it. But so far, the last time that I checked, we were over 1,000 acres that they've taken over, and they're continuing to do so. So it might be something, I love what you talked about keeping farmland so that we can have it and be sustainable and still have food. But truck farms are something that we're working on as an organization. It might be something that you guys want to put on the radar.
It may well be something that we should be on our radar. But one of the other points, though, is a lot of that stems to municipal planning and municipal bylaws and enforcement. So if the municipality is willing to allow that to happen, it'll happen. And that's where, when we lobby at the OFA, we lobby at all three levels of government, because there are things that need to be changed, whether it's land use, whether it's truck farms, as you're talking about, or whether it's provincial legislation. So it's an area that certainly needs to be looked at, because that's, again, comes into land that can no longer produce food, and there are better places to do those kinds of activities, no question about that.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks for that question. We value our real estate professionals in town, and we thank you for that input. Do we have another question, number 2? My friend Don, you're up.
Landon, with regards to the needs by 2030, I'm assuming you have a strategic plan that's more than just strategic and more than just conceptual on the location of new plants and where they should be. I have a farm. I can't move it. I have a truck farm. When the truck breaks down on it, and then I got to clean up the crap that leaks out of it. But bottom line, I can't move the farm. You can move your plants. We have infrastructure here in Sarnia-Lambton. When's the biodiesel, sustainable aviation fuel, et cetera, plant going to go in combination with a soy protein isolate plant that can be built beside it, so my beans don't have to go halfway around the damn world to come back.
Thank you, Don. Landon, can you talk to Don about his beans?
Dreaming about this moment. Okay, yeah. So I mean, the actual answer is no. I don't know. We don't know yet. But we're just in not the infancy of advocacy on this, but it's early stages, kind of trying to convince the government. We actually had a conversation with the government about 1.5 years ago, and I swear to God, someone said, well, we're good friends with the US, so why can't they just develop it? I think we've got an answer to why not now. So I think they're taking it a lot more seriously now that we need to start creating this out. I was thinking as the truck farm issue got brought up, this is a really good sort of segue into like that earlier point that I made about advocacy. It's about sort of like working with all different groups. I've sat down with the OFA, I've sat down with the grain growers, the forestry industry, the transportation industries, the aviation industries, and it's about sort of expanding that advocacy group, because the more voices you have going after it, it's obviously helpful. So this piece is, like I said, we're not there yet. There's so I don't have timelines for you, but we're certainly pushing to sort of expand it, and we argue that there's a better area than up here to help grow that. But we argue both for funding for the expansion of those biodiesel facilities, things like that, but also that full build out of the infrastructure, so grain crushing and things like that. So we're advocating for the exact same stuff that you guys are, because that's sort of what's key to sort of building that up. Since it's not about just sort of subsidies to make sure that we're making stuff that people can afford, but we're actually just throwing government money at. This is just about standing up the industry to get it to a level that it can scale. That's what they're doing in the States. That's what we've got now with ethanol. You can now make ethanol. You can even make biodiesel, and in some cases for less than you can gasoline and diesel. So we need to get there with renewable diesel. We need to get there with SAF, hydrogen, all of that. So.
Thanks, Simon. Appreciate your response. We have time for a quick third question. Anybody else? If not, we will close it out. So I'm not seeing any. So big thank you to the panelists. We appreciate your wisdom, your time with us this evening, and your candidness of coming up and talking about everything from beans to real estate and everything in between. So we're very appreciative of you. We've heard it a couple times tonight, never let a good crisis go to waste. And we talk about how that's a famous phrase out there. Many of you may think that actually comes from Winston Churchill. So it didn't. So even though Winston Churchill had ideas about the same philosophy of never letting a crisis go to waste, it was actually President Obama's chief of staff. His name is Ron Emanuel. And it was Ron who coined the phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste. I dare say that Ron perhaps let a good crisis, which was the financial crisis of 2008, go to waste. Do you know why? Because the saying was on, but nobody knows his name. If you're like me, you've never heard of the name Ron Emanuel before today, doing a bit of research or listening. So on that note, the thought I want to leave you with is, let's embrace where we are to the extent we can. Look for the opportunities, because there's always opportunities in chaos. Be innovative, engage with people, be present, and one other thing, work so hard and do such a great job that when this is in the rearview mirror, make sure everybody knows your name, unlike Ron Emanuel. So, thank you.
So that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Janice, for doing such a fabulous job moderating. Thank you to our panelists. And Chris Cook. Thank you to Chris.
The comments were very in-depth.
So just to end tonight, it's, I'm leaving actually feeling a little encouraged. I don't know about anybody else. Like I said earlier, I'm a bit of an optimist, so it was really encouraging to hear the words collaboration tonight, working together, expanding our voices, opportunities, just hearing those words being reiterated all night were very encouraging. So thank you to everybody who for sharing your expertise and knowledge. So as we come to tonight's close, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of you for joining us on this beautiful Monday night. I feel like tonight is like the first beautiful night of many more to come. So thank you for joining us, contributing to such a meaningful and engaging evening. A very special thank you to our sponsor, BDC. Michael and the team, they helped us pull this together quickly. They were able to get Pierre here. We tried to do it in the past, and look at it just took Rory Ring to give Michael a call, and we got him here, so that's great. Thank you to BDC. Thank you to Pierre for sharing his expert analysis and giving us a valuable national lens through which to view our local economic landscape. So Pierre's insights have sparked important conversations and considerations that we'll be carrying forward in our work and our planning. To Janice McMichael Dennis, thank you for your thoughtful moderation and leadership in guiding tonight's discussion. Your ability to connect the big picture with real world experience, helping bring clarity and focus to complex topics. I don't know about anybody else, but the whole IKEA reference was causing me anxiety. Been there, done that, never want to do it again. And of course, to our panelists, Greg Moffat, Landon Treesize, and Crispin Colvin, thank you for lending your time and expertise and perspectives. Your insights across agriculture, fuels, and chemistry have helped paint a more complete picture of the road ahead. We really appreciate you being here tonight. Events like this don't happen without strong collaboration. So another big thank you to our partners, the Lambton Business Collaborative, who I am so proud to work with on a regular basis. All these organizations that are represented here tonight, always open to helping anybody in the community. Any businesses, go to any of them. They're always more than happy and their doors are always open. So thank you for your partnership. Also, thank you to Rory, the Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce, for partnering with us as well, for bringing tonight's very quick event together. And to the people here at the 4 Points Sheraton, to our venue, for, of course, always coming together and helping us. Sometimes it's a quick, hey, are you available to help us? And we really appreciate it. So as we move forward, we know there's going to be more uncertain times, but also great potential, and we heard that tonight. So let's take what we've heard tonight, continue the dialogue, and work together to strengthen the resilience and growth of our local economy. So I'm wishing you all a very safe journey home tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.